Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I think we can start. Just checking with our presenters, Eduardo, John, everything okay? Yes, okay.
Can you see the presentation?
No, not yet, not yet. Let me just introduce you.
Okay.
Just one sec. I'm not seeing, John is online again. We need John as co-host as well, Artem. Great, so let's start. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Carla Valiclan, and I work for the Secretariat of the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm Conventions. I know several of you here in the call, and a few names are not known. So this invitation was sent to all our designated authorities of the three conventions, and also to all regional centers who are partners to the work we do under these three conventions, and also in UNEP in several other areas, including in the Global Framework on Chemicals. So the Global Framework on Chemicals Fund supports countries in implementing the Global Framework on Chemicals for the safe and sustainable management of chemicals and waste. And it launches periodic calls for applications. The next call for application of projects is currently open with a deadline by the 15th of December this year. The Secretariat of the Fund has developed several resources that you can access on the website to support the applicants throughout this process of application. But we thought that also we could complement and help the BRS parties and the regional centers with these two sessions that we agreed with them to organize, one today, as we are here now, and there will be another one with the same content, the same presentations tomorrow, just to cover the different time zones. Through this session, you have a chance to learn from colleagues of the GFC, the Global Framework on Chemical Secretariat, about the process, about the application, the types of projects that are being supported by these funds, and this may help you accelerate your application process by the end of this year. So today we have Eduardo and John, who will give us a presentation about the work of the funds and about the process of application. And after their presentations, you have a chance to ask questions and we'll hear from them about the answers. So without losing a lot of time, I would like to introduce our two presenters today, Eduardo Caldera Petit, the coordinator of the GFC Fund, and his colleague, John Maughan, a program officer. So Eduardo, please, you have the floor. And thank you very much for doing this with us.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Carla, for that introduction, and good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. So as mentioned, we are going today to give you an overview of the Global Framework on Chemicals Fund, which is one of the financial mechanisms of the new Global Framework on Chemicals, which was adopted in 2023. Next slide, please. So we've already provided some webinar sessions with information and detailed information on how to apply, on eligibility, on the different forms. So we want this session to focus more on your questions and also recommendations for BRS parties and also for the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm centers who could be implementing partners of projects submitted under the fund. So we're going to try to limit the first part of introduction, because these webinars have been recorded and are available, and we are going to share with you where you can locate that information, so that in that sense we can allow for more time for questions and answers. But basically we're going to provide you a short introduction of the GFC, but also on the fund, and then some relevant features of the round 2 for funding, which is different from round 1. And then we go to a second part where we are going to provide some recommendations and then some examples of the projects that succeeded in getting funding from round one, and then we'll open the questions and answers session. So next slide, please. So very briefly, because I'm sure that everyone here is aware of what the GFC is, I'm just going to say that the Global Framework on Chemicals was adopted in Bonn in September 2023, where ministers, stakeholders from different sectors around the world gather at the 5th International Chemicals Conference on Chemicals Management, and they reiterated the commitment to tackle pollution from chemicals and waste so that we can have a sustainable future and a planet free of harm from chemicals. This GFC is administered by UNEP, and in the chemicals and health branch, we're based in Geneva, and what we know that is the chemicals hub of the world. And as part of this global framework on chemicals, at the same time, there was the establishment of a dedicated fund to support developing countries in meeting the targets and objectives of the new framework. Next slide, please. So the stakeholders established this fund as part of a call of developing countries to get some support for meeting the objective and implementing the different actions that are stated in the Global Framework on Chemicals. And the fund launched a first round of applications in 2024, and we received over 100 applications from 77 countries. That was a very successful round. It was a pilot round, so there are a lot of lessons learned which are now being applied to the second round, and we're going to go into some of those shortly. But we're launching now the round two of funding. Actually, it was launched on the 30th of September, so we're already a month and a half away from the launching of the second round of funding. And for this cycle, we have refined the guidance and the process of application based on those lessons learned from the round one. But I will just mention what the biggest change is, and is that we have now a two-stage application process. First, we invite interested applicants in submitting a concept note, which is a lighter and shorter document that will allow you to set your idea clearly without necessarily going into too many details or getting too many of letters of support, etc. And then only successful concept notes will then be invited to submit a full application, which means that applicants can invest their time more efficiently. And this is also in response to the lessons learned from the previous round. And the timeline for this application process is that we issue the call for applications on 30th of September, and then the submission of concept notes are due by the 15th of December 2025. So there's still a little bit more than a month to prepare those concept notes. And as I said, these are lighter documents, shorter documents, 5 pages, so that will allow you more to focus on what the idea of the project is, so that it can be assessed by the executive board. And then once the executive board looks into these concept notes, then the successful applicants and shortlisted concept notes will be invited to develop a full application document, which would be to be submitted in the spring of 2026. And we're expecting that final funding decisions will take place by the executive board later in 2026, but not beyond, not like later than autumn. So we're aiming at having decisions in June next year. And we set up this new application process that has these 2 stages to ensure that there are high quality proposals that will make the review as well cycle smoother, because there will be an opportunity as well for the executive board to provide comments at the concept note that then could be incorporated into the full application. and that will eventually support a more robust full application project that can then be assessed for funding. Now, moving on into the strategic priorities of the fund. These are slightly more refined from the previous round, but still, because it's part of the terms of reference, they are pretty much similar to what we had in the first round. So the first strategic priority is to support institutional capacity in countries, meaning development of laws and legislation, establishment of coordination bodies, support compliance and enforcement mechanisms, etc. But also another of the strategic priorities of the fund is to support data and transparency, meaning to support the development of chemicals inventories in countries, but also IT and systems for chemicals data, risk assessment, and prioritization in line with the targets B1 to B4 of the Global Framework on Chemicals. Another strategic priority as well is to promote safer design of products and substitution of harmful chemicals with safer alternatives. So the board is looking into projects that could prove efforts to move markets towards safer alternative, and this is in line also with the targets D1 to D5 of the GFC. And here, a particular emphasis is given to projects that could work with high impact sectors, those that are chemical intensive, such as electronics, textiles, agriculture, and construction sectors, so that projects that could promote approaches that would reduce pollution in those sectors, while at the same time protecting the health, the labor, and the environment. And finally, another important strategic priority is projects that could look into building partnerships and that could also leverage further funding or accessing different investment and finance and expertise, for instance, by connecting with other relevant sectors that are also important for chemicals and waste management, such as the health and labor sectors, but also how we can mainstream chemicals and waste safe management into different economic sectors. And this is in line with the targets E2 to E6 of the GFC. Then it is important as well to mention who makes the decisions. So next slide, please, of funding. So it's important that everyone understands that there is the fund is governed by an executive board that includes 2 national representatives per each one of the UN regions and all donors or contributors to the fund. This is the body that makes the decisions on strategic priorities, guidance for applicants, but also who ultimately make decisions on which projects are successful for funding. The fund has a secretariat that we are part of that secretariat here today, John and I, and the secretariat supports the board by screening for completeness and eligibility all the applications that are submitted, and also facilitates the independent appraisal process for the executive board. But ultimately, the decisions are taken by this executive board. You can rest assured that there are transparent criteria and there is an assessment framework that guides all those reviews, and the decisions are recorded and reported to the conference, as the fund is one of the subsidiary bodies of the International Conference of the Framework. Next slide. Here, very briefly, just for you to understand the eligibility, which is very, very straightforward. Eligible recipients of funding from the GFC Fund are all developing countries, with a particular emphasis on less developed countries, small island development states, and countries with economies in transitions through their governments. So governments of developing countries are the main beneficiaries of the fund. However, On an exceptional basis as well, civil society networks can apply for funding as well under the GFC fund, which reflects the nature and one of the main features of the GFC, which is a multi-stakeholder instrument that is not only comprised by governments, but on the table as well, we have industry, we have NGOs, academia, and other sectors. We encourage, though, that applications are looked at from a multi-stakeholder approach, meaning that applications that are not only related to a specific sector such as environment, but also have collaboration, partnerships, and involvement of other sectors in the same project or initiative. For example, a project that also includes health, labor, agriculture, industry, academia, workers, that would be an application that is likely to succeed in receiving funding. And I think John will speak more about that on the second part. But these are part of the prioritization criteria as well. So something to consider. And again, we have developed a more detailed webinar that the recording is available, and we invite you to look at it because it provides more details on what are not only the minimum criteria, but the prioritization criteria. And in terms of the amount of support that is available, the fund may provide finance of between $300,000 and $800,000. And this cost should include the provisions for monitoring and evaluation, as well as the audit. And the timeline of projects is a maximum of 3 years, though we encourage projects with a shorter time frame so that we can quickly show results by the next conference, which is taking place in November 2026. Next slide, please. I think this is more administrative. This is what documents do applicants need to submit. I will only reiterate what I said at the beginning here. We have a 2 stages application process where we have a first stage, which is the concept note submission with a deadline of 15 December 2025. And this only requires a concept note form, which is a live document that includes the signature of the applicant and the signature of a designated focal point. That's it in terms of letters of support, in terms of signatures. If the concept note is shortlisted, the applicant will be invited to submit a full application form, which would include more details on the project itself, including the log frame, the budget, and supporting documents. So for the concept note, it's a lighter approach, which facilitates to focus on the idea of the project. And then if successful, then you would be invited to submit a full pledge or proposal. Next slide, please. And these are details as well. This presentation will be shared with you. I would just encourage you, if you have applied for round 1 of funding, do not use the same application form that you use in round 1, because these have changed and this has been improved. And here are the different tools and guidance that are available for this funding. With that, I pass on to John, who will be providing more details on the application itself and specific recommendations for parties and BCRCs. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Eduardo. My apologies. I'm going to speak with you with the screen in front of me. So if you cannot see me, it will be the voice from above, but I hope you're able to follow in any case. I'm going to move to the next slide. So what we wanted to move into next was a little bit more specific to this audience, to the BRS group, the BCRCs, the SCRCs. We've prepared a few recommendations based on our understanding of the process, as well as how the first round went. As you may be aware, 2 of the 4 approved projects in round 1 will actually be implemented by BCRCs or SCRCs, in this case, both BCRCs. And while we do not want to speak for the board, we believe that there are several aspects of the regional centers that helped improve their chances during round 1. And again, although we certainly will not speak for the board, they will make their own decisions. we believe that that unique value will continue to be attractive in round two. And in particular, there's 3 points that we think the BCRCs can really benefit from their structure, also as they did in round one, in round two. The first is the ability to secure strong government buy-in with members serving as applicants. This is a great approach. We had 2 applications that the implementing agency was not the same as the applicant. The applicant were the actual country. So it showed significant government buy-in, and that was certainly an attractive aspect. The second is the successful track record of BCRCs in implementing previous UNEP projects. So it helps very much that BCRCs, SCRCs, or any other partner has an excellent track record in their ability to implement UN projects. It's always a plus to know that that there's a strong experience in the applicant or the implementing agency. The third aspect is the proven ability to manage multi-country and regional projects. As regional centers who have experience with UN projects and are strongly connected to the government, these 3 aspects made it very attractive. The 2 that were approved were both multi-country/regional projects. And as Eduardo mentioned earlier, this is quite a unique aspect of the GFC Fund, and one that's likely to continue to be an interesting approach to the fund board. Okay, so again, I'll just note that there's no guarantee that BCRCs will continue to be selected in round 2. That will be up to the board. But what we're emphasizing here are the lasting advantages, the atu, the assets that the regional centers have. So there are several criteria that will be assessed in each application. And we didn't want to take the time to go through all of them. So we've selected 6. And you'll see that several of these are assessed directly and applied to the regional centers. I've already mentioned that government buy-in in the round 1 applications was a strong aspect. This, of course, is one of our criteria, one of our prioritization criteria that the board will use to make the final selections. That's showing strong national ownership. Another, perhaps underrated, but very important, I would say essential, aspect is simply a clear and well-defined project description. It is important that it's very logical, it's clear what you want to do, and it's written up in a fashion that doesn't hide or disguise somehow the clear approach from what you'll be doing to what you intend to achieve, what we call the outputs and the outcome. Another aspect is the proven implementation team. I mentioned this already as an aspect that BCRCs have. And part of this is, showing you don't necessarily have to have implemented a UN project. It's not a requirement in itself. But it is important to build trust that the applicant or the implementing team will be able to deliver the project. And that means being very clear about who's implementing what the roles and responsibilities are, and also being clear about any previous projects or complementary initiatives that you've run. As long as they're not the same, not duplicative, then that should be a signal that your team is capable and able to take on the project that you've described. Next is the long-term sustainability and a clear exit strategy. So the fund is making an investment in your project. That investment is expected to have impacts that last long beyond the project term. Our projects run up to 3 years, but we expect that for 5 years, maybe 10 years after that, we will continue to see the reward from the investment that we've made. And that needs to be clear in your project application, how after the project, will what you've done continue to exist and continue to create value? And a core aspect of that is the exit strategy. How will you go from the activities that have been funded so far by the GFC Fund to ensuring that they've been handed over to other stakeholders to take forward that may not have access to that project funding? A key aspect certainly is that sustainability. Next is demonstrating value for money. So of course, there's a budget attached, and resources, particularly these days, are always limited. And the board will take this into consideration in their assessments. It means that the budget that you come to the table with is not only very sensible, very clear, very reasonable, but also does not appear to be just going for the max amount and maybe trying to figure out how to justify that max amount. We've seen some applications that they were kicked out as a result of not having a strong rationale for why they need the full budget. And maybe if they had been a little bit more economical, submitted a lower budget for the same activities, or even reduced activities, but a much clearer project structure, they might have been funded. So this is really important. Do you need the money? And make it very clear. And a big aspect of this is also the high co-financing. So you may be aware that, and I believe it was in the slide that Eduardo presented, that the executive board of the fund requires a minimum of 25% co-financing. Projects that have greater than 25% co-financing, in other words, don't simply go for the minimum, but really strive to provide even more value than the minimum to the project, will certainly be noticed and recognized by the board. Next, and finally for today, is the regional and transboundary relevance. This is a criterion that gets assessed. Eduardo mentioned it, and I mentioned it in the case of BCRCs and SCRCs as well. This is a strong aspect for the fund, and a good project that is able to cross over borders with an implementation team that can do that is certainly a big plus. All right. Move on. So this year, the board also added, for clarification, some things that will not be prioritized. And the reason is we often received applications that had these things, and we felt that perhaps we should make it more explicit what we're looking for and also what we're not looking for. And so the board outlined some of these aspects. I've already mentioned that duplication of existing or past initiatives is a no-go. We don't want to see duplication of activities, and we do check for it. So I would encourage you to be creative, to show why this is new, why it adds value. It's okay to build on a past initiative as long as the project is new and shows how it's adding value. In fact, that can be a strength to build on a past initiative. If you've identified in a prior project that certain new aspects need to be taken forward from a previous project and will create even more impact, that can be a great sign. There's something to build on, as long as it's not duplicative. The next exclusion criteria is the focus mainly on research. So the board has been very clear that they're not interested in what you might think of as purely academic types of projects, where the entire project is focused on research, doing baseline studies, technical assessments. What really needs to be shown is research can certainly be a part of your project. Inevitably, it will be. But it should be clear what the path to impact is, how it will be implemented, how the stakeholders will take that research and change their policies, or other stakeholders might change their behavior or their practices in a way that will lead to better chemicals management and health impacts, as well as environmental impacts, naturally. Next is the involving direct investment in commercial ventures or for-profit enterprises. This is a UN rule. We cannot spend our funds, let them go directly to private or commercial enterprises. So make sure that that's not an aspect of your applications. Next, the board does not want to spend the project funds on investing in infrastructure or technical equipment. There's a limit of the amount of budget that can go to technical equipment. So that needs to be respected and taken into consideration. And finally, an overly narrow scope or limited impact. Again, there's a strong emphasis on regional projects. National projects, of course, are great as well, but probably not very local projects where the impact might be at the municipal level or without a clear way of nationalizing, mainstreaming, even building across borders. The scope will be too narrow for the board to consider. And this is my final slide. Here are the projects that are great examples. These are the 4 that were accepted in round 1 from the 2024-2025 period. And on the left, we have 2 that are both being implemented by BCRCs. On the right, we have 2 in Africa that are being implemented by NGOs. And that's again, as Eduardo mentioned, a unique aspect and part of the GFC Funds' interest in reaching out to a broader group of stakeholders. I encourage you to learn more about these, talk to your colleagues in BCRC Uruguay, BCRC Peru, and learn more about their projects if you're interested in applying to the fund. And with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Eduardo. Colleagues, now it's time for you to make questions. Please feel free. This is a great opportunity for all of you to clarify any points that you may have, any doubts, either parties or regional centers. So we would appreciate if you use the opportunity. We already have one question in the chat, and I would invite others, if you have questions, to either write them on the chat or raise your hand, and we'll give you the floor to speak up. So Eduardo or John, I wonder if one of you could try to answer the question in the chat, please. The question is from Mauritius: does the funding cover undertaking preparation of master plan on hazardous waste, meaning strategy and action plan?
I'm happy to take that one, Eduardo. Yeah. Excellent. Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Barachi from Mauritius, for your question. The funding certainly would cover it, depending on how it's designed. So clearly, as a strategy and action plan, there is likely to be a focus on policymakers, if I understand the idea correctly. And absolutely, that it relates to institution building, which Eduardo mentioned as one of the strategic priorities of the fund. And what would be important is showing how your activities or what you're going to produce in the project is going to logically, clearly lead to that strategy and action plan. Show how your stakeholders are already involved and interested in achieving it, and bought into the aspect, that government buy-in aspect. So certainly I would encourage you to think through how you will get there in the project and go for it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for the reply. Actually, we do have, we have advanced a bit in the management of hazardous waste. We have a state-of-the-art infrastructure which accept waste. I mean, they store there and then package it, label it, and export it to other countries for treatment. And it is managed by a great company in Mauritius. But we don't have a master plan for Mauritius and the islands around it. I mean, the dependencies island. So thank you so much for the reply. Certainly we'll make an application for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We now have another question from a regional center, also in the chat. This is the regional center located in Slovakia. So for the information of colleagues here attending, they serve different countries in the region, developing countries. Therefore, the question is that they wish to submit a regional project, and they're asking whether it's okay that the regional center is located in a EU member state, but actually they serve countries in the region which are not, or not yet, EU member states. So I wonder if Eduardo or John could answer that question.
Yes.
Please.
First on the eligibility, again, is developing countries, but also countries with economies in transition. So if the applicants are countries with economies in transition, they would be eligible. It would be better if the main applicant that submits the application is a government, and then the regional center is identified as an implementing partner. That would be the approach that we would suggest, which was the case of the previous approved projects from round one. But we do encourage, and that allows me to reiterate the point that John made, regional projects, because for the same amount of money, if you can prove that you can benefit more than 1, 2, or 3 countries, then definitely this will be prioritized by the board. So this is a very pertinent question because regional projects are going to be prioritized. And second, if we have a BCRC that can act as implementing partner, even though their role will be only on project management, if they can prove that that will yield efficiencies and economies of scale, that is a perfect argument for a BCRC to justify their role in the project management of a regional project. So that's why we're also here today, because we see the value, and the board sees the value of regional centers acting as the implementing partner for regional projects. It makes it easier for a structure like a BCRC, for instance, to conduct the project management of a project that involves different countries. So we encourage you to think about getting the support of a few governments to make an application of a regional approach and using a BCRC. I think the next question, you can take it, John.
Yeah, I think the next question comes from Qatar. Yeah, he would like, and I think it would apply to several colleagues here attending the call today, if you have an example of how the buy-in of the government can be done in the application process. If you have any example to share, that will be helpful. Thank you.
Great, I'm happy to take that one. Both of the examples from the first round that are being led by BCRC Uruguay and BCRC Peru are great examples of how government buy-in can be shown. So the first aspect is just built into the way that they applied. The applicant was not the BCRC. The applicant was the governments. They were able to bring the government of Peru and the government of Colombia, in the BCRC Peru case, to the project application process. They submitted the application. And so it's a clear sign to the board that the government is involved and interested. They also provided letters of support. There was a clear track record that BCRC Peru has worked with them before and has excellent contacts within the government. So they were simply able to make a convincing case that the government was not sort of on the sideline and the implementing agency was going to do all the work and maybe they show up to a meeting, right? The board will want to see more than that. And it's very clear from these applications how the government was involved. So I encourage you to think through those things. And I'll note one thing. In the first round, we only had the applications. So if you remember that long list of things that we'll be asking for in the full application stage, that had to be given up front. So we had all of the letters of support, etc. And this round, as Eduardo explained, we have a much shortened first step. in the application process. That's the concept note. And that was that little list of just signatures from the applicants and then also from a designated focal point within the governments that are in the project. So that's only a signature, and we don't require letters. So in this case, for the concept note, what you'll want to show is who's applying it, who's applying for it. If that's the governments, that's already a great sign at the concept note stage. Who's signing it, and of course that track record and explanation of how the project will be implemented. Is the government involved? That stakeholder engagement part of the application will be very important.
Thank you. Then just a follow-up from my side, and then I'll give the floor again for another country question. So if it's 2 countries or 3 countries doing together, how they should apply? They should apply together, they coordinate among themselves together with, for example, the regional center supporting them, but the application comes in the name of the 3 or more countries?
And take that one, and then that will allow me also to jump into the next one, which I want to also clarify. So the form for application, both are eligible, national projects or regional projects. What could be prioritized is regional projects because it will have greater impact, so that fits into the prioritization criteria. But national projects can also be eligible. If it's a multi-country application, the application needs to identify a lead applicant, which is the government that is going to put together the application and submit the application. But the implementing partner of such a project can be either the lead applicant, another government of the included in the application, or a regional center. And that is identified and explained in the application form, where it is also requested to provide information on the project management structure and the implementation approach.
Thank you, Eduardo. Yeah, and another question is related to what you just said, now from Joseph from Ghana.
Yes, and I would like to stop on that question again to avoid any confusion. So the Ghana representative is asking whether there is a high preference for submissions from regional centers, which could leave parties with very little motivation if they want to apply as a party due to specific needs. So I apologize if that was an understanding that that transpired from our presentation. This is not the case. We are not we're not having preference for of projects submitted by regional centers. Actually, we are encouraging government application because these are the main beneficiaries as described in the eligibility criteria. What we are now taking advantage of having BCRCs and Stockholm regional centers here is that they can act as implementing partners of those projects, meaning it's not the applicant, but it's the entity that could be eventually implementing the project when it comes to a regional project. If it's a national project, then there's no necessarily a need for a regional center, though it could also be an implementing partner as well, even if it's only a national project. We have had cases like that in the special program, etc. But when it's a regional project, which is what is prioritized, then it makes sense to identify a BCRC, for instance, as the implementing partner. But that's not the only solution. That's not necessarily the only way that a regional project can be implemented. I want to make it clear here, as well as that national projects are also eligible for funding as long as they prove a high impact and meet the minimum and the prioritization criteria that are described in the guidance.
Thank you very much. I think this is a very, very important thing for everybody to understand. Then we have a question from a colleague from Yemen. It's related to infrastructure, to build a hangar, and the Environment Protection Authority to collect obsolete chemicals, if I understand rightly, and store them for treatment and neutralization, etc.
Would you like to take that one, John?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So this one, I would say we have to be a little careful. If the project is only to invest in a hangar, and that's the core part of it, I would say it would be ineligible. However, if the focus of the project is really more on the collection and storage and the treatment, not building the treatment facility, but maybe working with stakeholders to help set one up, then it could be eligible. But I would be careful with the hangar. I would be careful with the suggestion that, you know, a treatment facility is there because of that exclusion criterion on investing in infrastructure. There's really a 10% limit on the budget that can go to any kind of physical equipment, 10%. So you can see from the budget rules that unless you're really focused on capacity building or policy development around something that exists or may exist in the future, like this treatment facility, then you're going to be ineligible.
Thank you. And we have another question. I couldn't identify the country. Ibrahim Mansara is asking whether one country can actually apply in different regional proposals with different countries.
Yes, thank you, Carla. I'm going to take that one. But also to add on the previous question from John, I would not necessarily, again, discourage you to apply if you are thinking on having this facility. But as John said, the projects that are only focused on infrastructure are not prioritized by the board. But if you can prove that with the project, you are leveraging funding from the government or from another entity to for the infrastructure part, and then the project is building on training, capacity building, stakeholder engagement, etc., then the project can be eligible. So I invite you to actually think creatively and not get discouraged from the get-go when you are thinking of a project that involves infrastructure. It's just that you need to make sure that you are also compliant with the guidance, and which limits at 10% of the budget for infrastructure. But there could be a way of actually having a project that could have that component as well if it's tied to legislation and in-country capacity. And then on the question about a single country submitting, for instance, 3 regional proposals, there's no limitation in the current guidance. This can change in the future rounds, but there's no limitation in the current guidance on how many applications a country can submit. What I would just say as a word of caution is that when a country is submitting multiple applications, then you need to take into consideration that you might be competing with the same funding and the same limitation. And as the board, in making their decision, takes also into consideration geographical and regional scope, then if you have multiple submissions, those multiple submissions from the same country could be competing amongst themselves. And it's very unlikely that a country could receive funding for 2 projects in the same round, because of the limited funding and because this regional balance that the fund needs to provide.
Thank you. We have another question about database construction. So the question is whether this kind of project to support information on chemicals and waste, such an inventory about what is available in the country, and the quantities available, the type, toxicity, use, and so on. So a database to support, organize, and collect this kind of information, whether this would be a good idea for a project.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. Yes, of course, databases would be more than welcome. A lot of the activity will be in engaging stakeholders and getting the data either collected, partly collected, but also shared and used for capacity building. Again, there is a 10% equipment limit, so physical things. The project wouldn't be about investing in a lot of data infrastructure, but certainly populating, setting up a database if it's not too much expenditure to do that. Those are all welcome project aspects to bring to the table.
Great. Thank you. There is also a question from a colleague from Bhutan. whether there is a possibility of utilizing the funds for capacity building initiatives and trainings.
Yes, let me take that one, John. As one of the strategic priorities, the first one is institutional strengthening. So capacity building, trainings, etc., would fit into that priority, right? That minimum criteria. However, I would also here just give you a word of caution that this fund is looking into projects that not only looking to trainings, capacity building, as for instance, other funding mechanisms that exist already for that. This needs to be also meeting the other criteria or prioritization criteria. So it can be a project that has capacity building, but also is building on new legislation. It's also supporting work in high impact sectors, for instance, or is leveraging sustainable domestic financing. Then yes, it can incorporate capacity building. If it's a strictly capacity building project and raise awareness project, then this project could fit better into a different financial mechanism, such for instance, the special program for institutional strengthening. So this is where you have to also be mindful of how to prove that this project fits better into the GFC fund and not, for instance, in the special program, in the SIP of Minamata, or even into the GEF portfolio. So yes, I think that would be it for that question. Thank you, Carla.
And just to jump in, we had one question in French from Midou Alde. And yes, so the question is, I hope that the materials will be available. So the presentation, I believe, is what he's referring to.
Yes, forgot to mention that. And also in the invitation, I already included some links for you to the website of the GFC, where all the information is available, including previous recorded webinars, the forms for applications, guidance, documents that colleagues have developed. So please have a look at that. But if I understand correctly, the applications are to be made in English, no?
Yes, correct.
Okay. But I wanted to just highlight one important point that I think it's Eduardo just touched upon, which is, and they mentioned also in their presentation, that you should, all applicants should avoid repeating what you have proposed to other funds, if I understand rightly, and also avoid the scope of the other types of funding that you may have access to, such as the special program or GEF. But I don't know if John or Eduardo could elaborate a bit more so that people understand a bit more clearly, if there is a chance. Maybe it's a blur area, but if there is something that you could say about that so that colleagues avoid making this basic mistake. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. So first, I would say that this fund, one of the also features is that should be complementary to other financial mechanisms and not duplicative. And we know that for chemicals and waste, we have other financial mechanisms, such as the special program. We have the SIP for Minamata, we have the GEF as well, and others, right? So it is important that if you are considering on applying for the GFC, you are making sure that you are following the guidance for the GFC and that the project is contributing to the GFC strategic priorities and objective and targets of the framework. Would also know that the framework is very broad, and actually work that could be for the BRS conventions, for instance, would fit also on the objective of the GFC fund. So then is where you need to prove where are you making the difference and why this fund is more likely to be the one to support that initiative. For instance, if you have a project that focuses on POPs, this is definitely a project that could fit better into the GEF, which is the financial mechanism of the Stockholm Convention. So it will not be prioritized under the GFC. If it's a project that is only on capacity building, raising awareness and establishing a multi-stakeholder mechanism for chemicals and waste management, this is definitely a traditional project under the special program. So even though it's institutional strengthening, which is part of the priorities of the fund, this will fit better into the special program. So you need to make sure that you are either incorporating a multi-stakeholder approach with other sectors such as health and the environment, or that you are tackling also impact sectors. So this is what would make the difference and would make it fit more into what the GFC fund is likely to support. And also, when you have the applications forms, there are questions about other initiatives in country. For instance, if the country has already received funding from the special program, this is a question. If the country has received funding from another GEF project, and they need to explain how this new project proposal is either building on the results of that previous funding or is actually complementary or building synergies with the other project and not duplicative. And apart from that, the Secretariat, when it conducts the first screening of applications, also makes sure that to review other special program funding, for instance, that the country has received, to make sure that we are not duplicating the same activity. So, and if there is an identification of duplication, this is likely to affect your application. So I invite you and encourage you to please be mindful of that. And we know, for instance, for the first round, around 70 applicants for funding under the GFC Fund first round of application had already received a special program funding. So we do that assessment, and this is something that the Secretariat screens, but also the board considers, because we don't want to duplicate funding, and we don't want to, we want to make the most strategic use of the limited funding that we have for this.
Thank you very much. And merci aussi, Monsieur Baldé de Guinée, for your question, pour la question. So, colleagues, we reached the end of this session today. I just put in the chat the email of the GFC Secretariat in case you have further questions. I invite you and incentivize you all to consider this opportunity. We don't have these opportunities all the time, and we have one right now in front of us, so don't miss it. And for those who didn't have a chance to attend the session today, if you have colleagues who would like to attend this another session, we have another one tomorrow at 3 o'clock Geneva time, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just confirm to be on the safe side. Yes, 3 o'clock Geneva time, Switzerland. So Eduardo would like to say something before we go. Please, Eduardo, go ahead.
Yes, I'm sorry if I interrupted you. I just wanted just to close up this. I would invite you to please go to the GFC Fund webpage under the UNEP website, because we have tools and resources that are available for applicants to make your applications, but also to watch the recordings of the launching webinars, where we provided more information on how to apply, how to fill out the forms, on the priorities. But in addition to that, the Secretariat has set up a help desk to support applicants in this process of putting on their concept notes and their project application. So we encourage you to reach out to us no later than a month before submission. So within the next this week or the next week, to reach out through the email address that was just shared by Carla, and we will be happy to provide you specific responses to queries that you might have as you put together your application. Even you can submit a draft of your application with a question, and we would be able to confirm with you any questions or doubts that you have before putting together the final submission. So take advantage of that. Don't wait until the last minute. Do it early on, so that we can manage within the Secretariat to give you a response. If you reach out to us too late or a week before the deadline, it will be likely that we might not be in a position to reply. So please reach out as early as possible. And thank you very much. And we do hope to see many applications from BRS parties into this second round of funding. Thank you, Carla, for organizing. You are muted, Carla, sorry.
Thank you for letting me know. Yeah, thank you, Eduardo and John, for taking the time to explain these important details for all of us. And thank you to all participants and my colleagues in the Secretariat who are here in this call. I think this is a very useful opportunity for all of us to learn about this opportunity of the GFC funds. And on the chat, We have also links that you can use to have more information about the fund. So please make use of these resources. And if any doubts, reach out to the GFC Secretariat, or if you prefer to talk to one of us also in the Secretariat of the BRS conventions, we can also try to indicate whatever you prefer. But I would say the colleagues in the GFC Secretariat are the ones who can help you directly with this application, so don't waste any time. Have a good continuation of your day, afternoon, and evening, and see you soon. Bye-bye.